Hey, Ellie.
Hi, Alberto.
Hey, welcome to tonight's hearings. I'll tell this everybody, we are being recorded. This technically is a public hearing. I don't think you received any public invited to be heard, Brenda. I'm not sure. I think you would have told me if we did. So
we did not.
we did not. Okay, so there's no public invited to be heard. Now we don't have quorum. So because we're not taking any votes, we're just asking questions and listening. So there's no need for any votes tonight. Each agency will get 15 minutes of Q&A from the board. I will be the timekeeper. Let me just introduce real quick, Robert Putnam and Deanna Blair are both board members, and we might get some Chiquita Yarbrough, our city council liaison, may join us, just in case if she does, just so you know that's who she is. And I'm gonna go ahead and start the timer and give you your 15
1 second.
minutes.
Sorry, I think Tamara Fox, our grants manager, is supposed to be coming tonight.
Okay.
Too. I'm wondering, I saw 2 different links on my calendar, and so I'm wondering if she might be waiting on the other one. Do you mind if I just touch base with her real quick?
Yeah, go ahead. That's fine. We got 15 minutes, so we can do that.
Yep. Okay, and for sake of time, we can just go ahead and get started, and then hopefully we'll be able to jump on.
And here she comes. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and start. I'm gonna start the timer right now.
Okay.
So does anybody have any questions for attention homes? Deanna, you want to start? Okay.
Sure, I'll kick it off. So in reviewing your application, I was wondering, and I don't know if this is a question that you can actually answer, but I was trying to figure out how many youth you serve maybe come from Longmont. I mean, I understand that they're transitory, right? So they may not identify as having come from a specific place, but I was trying to gauge terms of representation of clients from Longmont.
Great question. Yeah, it is tricky, right? Because we, whenever a young person shows up to our door, we, don't always get the exact information about where they consider their home to be. And so we do take that into consideration. But I think, and Tamara, you may have the exact numbers because we serve, roughly around between like 250 and 300 young people a year. And Tamara, is it fair to say that we've served around, I think, 30 young people from Longmont?
Yeah, I think, as far as the outreach, when we look at all of our services together, yeah, I think 30 is about right. Some go directly into the housing program and some are only at shelter. So yeah, when you're pulling names, it's all over the place.
I think that number can be probably underrepresented as well, as we know that, it can vary how young people identify where they're from.
Sure, and I could see that they might not necessarily want to say where they're from too and accessing services. So, okay, thank you. That helps me sort of get a range of who you're serving. And then I have some other questions too, but I'll wait to see if anybody else has questions first.
Well, I have a question, but I need to look at something real quick. So if you don't mind doing your next one, and then I can come in after that, because I do have a question about your program budget that you sent, but I need to look at something real quick.
Okay, great. I can keep going. Okay, so I had a question about in your application, you'd indicated that when you opened, you were really the only program providing the services that you provide to youth facing homelessness. I'm wondering if that's still true, and if it's not, if you know of how many other organizations do what you do. I don't remember seeing any other ones, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So we still are the only youth serving emergency shelter in the Front Range, kind of north up to the Wyoming border. So we're still kind of it. There is nothing in kind of like the northern Colorado area. There is another youth providing organization in the Denver metro area, Urban Peak. So, but in terms of Boulder County, our area serving young people experiencing homelessness, we're kind of it.
Okay, great.
So,
When-
go ahead, Robert, you can go before me, that's fine.
I was going to say, when Attention Homes began, it was started by Judge Holmes, I think. And it was mainly referrals from the courts, right? I
Yeah.
mean, in those days.
That's correct. Yeah, it was originally young people going into detention, and then yeah, Judge Holmes really wanted to figure out a way to not have that happen, because it's not a great place for young people, and it, you know, it was for small things. And so trying that concept of attention, not detention, is our history when we were.
Is it still mostly related to court referrals, or have you moved out of that?
We have moved out of that. We've grown a lot. So we still have the program that we receive referrals directly from counties for young people that are currently in the child welfare system and the foster care system, and they're able to come and live at Chase House, which is our residential child care facility, also now is a qualified residential treatment program. But then we have also grown to include emergency shelter services, because we saw young people showing back up at our door and they weren't able to access those services due to our state licensure. And so we opened the emergency shelter in 2010, I believe, 2011, and that's emergency shelter, daytime drop-in center, and street outreach programming. And then since 2015, we've been doing a lot in the housing space. And so we have a scattered site transitional living program where we're able to match young people with apartments in the community and provide rental subsidies and supportive services. And then we have our permanent supportive housing project, 1440 Pine Street. That's home to 41 young people that recently have exited homelessness and are now living in the building and receiving supportive services. And hopefully in a year or two, we'll have another one of those in Denver. So.
I'm assuming, though, that most of these are not judicial or have to do with the law, then most of your referrals.
I mean, we still have a lot of really systems involved young people. And we are working currently with there's been some reform in the juvenile justice system. And so there are less detention beds. And so we are currently working with the DA's office and with Boulder County to figure out, are there opportunities where we can maybe have a couple beds reserved at the shelter, the source, that would be specifically for young people that no longer might have qualified for detention previously, but no longer do with the juvenile justice reform, and could they come and be at the source for a period of time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing. I think this is pretty or fairly well known, but the youth that have been in the child welfare system and are aging out of foster care, that is one of the fastest growing demographics for homelessness right now. And so it, in a way, it's not a shift to a new focus. It really grew out of that observation that homelessness was kind of where a lot of youth that were leaving Chase House were what they were faced with, because they don't have that support network, and they don't necessarily have somewhere to go. They turn 18 and they're kind of cut off, is how it has historically been.
Yeah, thanks for adding that, Tamara, because yeah, we see typically about 35% of young people experiencing homelessness have had an episode of or have been involved in the foster care system.
So I guess my question, a couple of things actually I have, and I want to make sure I give time for Deanna, because we have about 8 minutes left. One is, I know, because of my position, I know that you're in transition right now with your executive leadership, and just wondering if you all have any interim strategic goals or, things that you are considering with the departure of, Chris.
Yeah, that's a big question. We do have an interim CEO who's stepping in effective operationally today, and then kind of full-time starting on October 14th. But we, over the past year have been working on a 3-year, so 2022 to 2025 strategic plan. And so have that laid out and are currently building out, kind of the implementation plan around that. And so we have identified, kind of our big goals that we're working on for the next few years. And I think are hopeful. Well, we know our interim CEO will be in support of moving that work forward. And then I think are hopeful that when we find our new CEO, that they will also be in support and aligned with these strategic goals.
So, what's interesting, I didn't see them in the application. Could you just share a couple of them with me if you can?
Yeah, so we're really looking, and we can definitely follow up if you'd like more material.
Please, yeah.
So we're looking at, enhancing our current services to kind of prepare for expansion and replication, and make sure that we're using the continuous quality improvement lens to ensure that our current services are meeting all the changing needs of young people. We have kind of a real strong pillar around growing housing. And so we know that there's a significant need. There's about 518 beds in the state of Colorado for young people, and we want to see that number increase drastically. And so we want to support that.
Wow. Yeah, if you could send those to me, that would be great. Because I couldn't find them in the application. So
yeah, absolutely. Sorry about the dog squeaking in the background with the toy.
No worries.
Feeling a little attention deprived, clearly. And then a couple others are identifying and joining in partnerships and coalitions that can really help build this movement around how do we end youth homelessness, because we know it's not going to just be us, right? It's part of our rebrand and part of why we changed the way that we're talking about our work, because it has to take everyone. It takes all of us together doing this work. And then we've got some enhancing of capacity and systems, and then really working on kind of transformational board leadership.
Awesome. Okay. All right, Deanna, I'll give it back to you. We got about 5 minutes left.
I'm probably not going to take the whole 5, but this is sort of a comment more that in reviewing these applications, we see, one of the things that we consider is board diversity, right? And so I've been doing this for 3 years, and I feel like we spend a lot of time talking to boards about how they need to diversify and do better work in that regard. And sometimes I feel like they nod their head and say, yeah, and nothing changes in the application in the next year. But in looking over your application, your board is nicely diverse. And since I spend a lot of time telling people they need to do a better job, I wanted to just tell you that I feel like you've done a good job, and I appreciate it. And it is a factor that gets considered when we rank organizations and can make a difference in funding levels, and frankly, whether people get funded at all. So I just want you to know that we appreciate it and we see it. And so thank you for doing it. And then I guess I was also wondering, I guess this goes somewhat along with your strategic goals in terms of what you see as the biggest obstacle to assisting the youth that you serve currently.
It's a big question.
I mean, maybe there's too many of them to prioritize one as the biggest. I don't know.
Yeah. I think in terms of, I think we're working a lot in the housing space, and know that that's kind of where we need to head. And it's a really important piece of the work that we're doing to end youth homelessness. It has to be that we're able to grow inventory, able to find the tenancy, the supportive service dollars that are paired with that. And I think that's something that we see sometimes where there's the rental subsidies or the housing vouchers that are rolled out, but there isn't the supportive service funding that comes in tandem with that. And for us, the work that we do, and I think the work that really supports young people kind of healing and moving forward out of homelessness and into, reaching their full potential, really is around relationships and around, learning life skills and building that resilience alongside positive adults, and being able to form those, relationships that have significant impact. And so I think that's a challenge. I also think that we've kind of been beating on this drum for a long time that we have to talk more about youth homelessness on a broader scale, statewide, federally. And I think it just hasn't risen up to the top yet. And so I think systemically, there's still some challenges around that in terms of being able to, I think, reach the need and make a significant impact. And so we're trying to do a little bit more in that, I think advocacy legislative space to really push forward some of these efforts. So Tamara, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think, historically, homelessness in general has sort of been seen as an individual challenge. And I think one thing that we're trying to do is frame it within those larger conversations, because we know that the systems that exist in society drive homelessness as well. So equity and all of that is just as important, for talking about homelessness. And I think there is that tendency to sort of point fingers or to look at that individual and say, well, they should have done this, they should have done that, when really there are these societal structures that are sort of pushing them in a certain direction based on different things. And again, without that support network, none of us, when I was 20, 23, I didn't know what I was doing. We all need that support. It's something that takes the whole community really to make sure that young people thrive.
Mhm.
So this is we got the 1 minute mark. If there are no more questions from the board, love to give you, Ellie and Tamara, about 45 seconds if you want to share anything with us that you think is important for us to know.
The only thing I'll add, and Deanna, I appreciate just the observation around the board diversity. I think that's been something we've really been working hard on, and we have put together a justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion strategic plan that we are going to be integrating into our larger strategic plan, so that it's not separate, but it's integrated, right? Because we have to do all of our work through an equity and justice lens. And so that's I think a big piece of the work that we're moving forward right now. And that includes, strengthening our youth leadership and our, authentic youth engagement, which is a big piece, and continuing to work on our diversity across staff to ensure that we are representative of the young people we serve, and that we're, supporting them in the best way possible through that lived experience lens. So just like that.
All right, and that was a timer. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you all for the work you
Have a
do.
good rest of your night.
Yeah,
Okay.
One quick question, Alberto. You mentioned the budget. So if you have any follow-up questions, just go ahead
Yeah, I'll
and shoot
follow
over
up.
an email.
Yeah. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you.
All right.
Good night. Thank you.
I believe our next person isn't here yet, but according to Brenda, it should be Mother House. And I think the good thing is we confirmed with everybody this year, so I'm assuming that Mother House will be here any second now. And I can always email her if she thought. Did you all get, I think I sent you all, Mother House had a few things missing.
Yeah, I noticed like the board demographics sheet was missing, which I
Right.
didn't realize until I clicked into it, and then I thought, oh yeah, Eliberto probably sent that. So yeah, we got
It
those.
should be in your emails.
Yeah.
So
No, I'm glad you noticed that. Thank you.
yeah, well, like you guys, I was reviewing it. I'm like, wait, this is missing something. So I followed up with Lisa. And typically, like we've done in the past, I give them 24 hours to get it, and they usually get it within a few hours.
Yeah,
So,
this is the advantage of not reviewing 2 hours before the meeting, probably, Eliberto.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, this is
Yeah.
so I'm gonna email Lisa here. I'm assuming she's gonna join, but while we're doing that, I'm gonna shoot her a quick email. they are the next ones, right, Brenda?
They are. The only
And-
switch we had was with Safe House and
Okay, and she did confirm, correct?
yes.
Okay, I'm emailing her right now. I was actually pretty impressed last night where we had, or not last night, it's playing together on Monday night where we had everybody show up.
I know, that was great.
Yeah. So Robert, this does happen on occasion. People are running late. If an agency and it's not if an agency doesn't show up and it's not a mistake on our part, because we can make mistakes, they will be disqualified from funding. You have to come to the hearing. And now if we send it to the wrong email but it sounds like she confirmed, then we would find another time. I would probably ask you to listen to them if it's our fault, because like I said, we're not perfect, we're not infallible, we could make mistakes. But if it's on them, then yeah, they would be excluded from funding.
It's like my worst nightmare to put all that effort into an application and that not come for the interview. It's just,
Okay. She just checked in and said that she couldn't get it to open, so I resent it.
oh, good.
Okay.
See. I apologize. My camera, I couldn't get it to connect, so that's why. And so just kind of sitting in the background.
Is there a phone number she can call on that link too, just in case? And we don't need to see her. We just need to talk to her.
Yeah, there is. Let me follow up with her real quick here.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if she's not on camera, that's fine.
Yeah, I don't need to see her. That's okay. We just need to interrogate her.
Yeah, I have some questions. I will say, I mean, she's got a pretty diverse board. I was pretty impressed with that.
Same. I felt like the agencies we're interviewing tonight run the gamut on diversity of their boards, right? There are some that seem to have done a really good job and some that haven't done so great.
All right, here she is. Let's admit her, and again, I'll do the introductions. Let's see. Yay, it worked. Okay, I was getting worried there.
No, I'm so sorry. We just had, I think, some confusion initially about the date, and I ended up with a Zoom invite for the 3rd. So anyway, delighted to see you all. I'm glad to have made it through.
All right, thank you, Lisa. Thank you for being here. Yeah, and just on occasions, if it's an error on our part, we're not perfect, we're not infallible, then we would reschedule with you. So just so you know, it's just this: if an agency misses because they forgot something came up, then they're just disqualified. But if it's something that like I said, if we make an error, we will make the time to have the hearing at another time. So let me quickly introduce Robert Putnam and Deanna Blair. They are both board members. Now, I know you usually see, I didn't tell this to the other group, you usually see a whole bunch more people, but this year we broke it up and we let board members choose the priority area that they were most interested to do. And so this is why we have less board members. We may have another board member, or not, she's not a board member, but she's a city council liaison. Shakita may join, so just be aware of that. We're going to give you 15 minutes for us to provide question and answers. And then if there is time left over, then we'll let you share whatever you think is important to share. Okay?
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. I'm
So much more fun with just a couple.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and start the timer now. Does anyone have any questions to start with for Lisa?
I can start. I don't want to hog the platform, but I can start. So obviously tonight we're interviewing agencies that provide housing supportive services, and equally obviously your organization serves or is geared towards single parents with infants or people that are pregnant. I'm just wondering if you're unique in terms of serving that target demographic in the Boulder County area.
In Boulder County, there's also Little Flower. It's a maternity shelter, but it does have a religious requirement for folks to stay. I believe that they are able to house 2 folks at a time. And yes, so we are the only secular shelter in Boulder County.
Great, thank you. And then aside from being the shelter that targets the specific demographic that you're targeting, how else do you believe you differ from other organizations that are providing housing supportive services, if in any way?
Well, I think the services we provide at Mother House are just really much more comprehensive than what we see a lot of folks do. And that's simply because we are a very small tailored program. So when you're working with 20, 40, 50 people at a time, there is not the same kind of opportunity that we have to sit down with our clients, really get to know them, understand specifically who each person is, where they're coming from, what their life has looked like, what the challenges they have are, and then work with them each step of the way. So while we do have some clients who might leave as quickly as 4 weeks in, we can sometimes find housing really, really quickly for folks, especially those who are with us through domestic violence. And we have other folks who might stay 12 to 15 months if they have a laundry list of things that makes housing difficult. The average stay is about 8 months. So you can imagine that 8 months of seeing somebody every breakfast, every lunch, every dinner, you know, sort of every time they walk through the house, hearing about what went well in their day, what went poorly, talking to them about their pregnancy journeys, about what it means to be a new parent or to be a second-time parent, et cetera. Like the connection we make with these people is very large scale and very intense. And it means it's not just about finding them housing, it's about finding solutions that meet the need that brought them to us in the first place, right? The goal is to try and break the cycles that have these folks joining our program for the first time. Usually they've got significant trauma with their parents, with their partners, et cetera, and talking to them about how did you end up here? Why is it that your life has taken a different path than you thought it would? Helps us to figure out sort of holistic and comprehensive solutions that let folks, when they leave us, stay housed, stay sober, stay employed, and stay with their families. Sorry, that was really too long.
No, it wasn't. It was actually very helpful. So thank you.
So, Deanna, okay, can I? Good. All right. So Lisa, so just so you know, when we evaluate these applications, even though we all, you know, the boards and I see the same application, we have different questions that we are supposed to evaluate. And so, for example, my role is really around financial stability of the organization, and also I do check around strategic goals and those kinds of things. But I also get the pleasure of looking at the diversity of I get to grade that to see the inclusive practices and diversity. And I must admit, I was pretty impressed with the amount of diversity you have on your board. Can you share how that came about?
We made it a priority a few years ago. So Alberto, I know we've known each other for a while, and I don't know if you went back to look through any of our old applications, but when I started at Mother House 4.5 years ago, we had a board of 15, and everybody on our board was white and wealthy and between the ages of 40 and 60. And as we move forward and as we looked at how to change our programming and how we could be more useful and integrate better into the needs of Boulder County, with that, it meant bringing in board members who understood the work that we did. So we have board members with lived experience. That was a key value for us. And then also we put a lot of energy into specifically recruiting board members whose voices represented groups that weren't currently represented on our board. So we spent time talking to folks from Latino communities, from Black communities, and also some other folks from the unhoused community, just specifically with that goal of recruitment and making sure that we had a multitude of voices from which we could draw and learn and listen as we considered how, why, and where to expand our programming.
Well, I just wanted to say that congrats on it's a very diverse board. And then my other question is, you know, when I was looking at your application, I'm gonna go back and look at it again just to make sure. I saw a really good description of your services, and I guess the question that I wanted to ask was about, you know, what are some strategic goals that you may not have mentioned there that you think are important for the board to know that you are working on?
Alberto, another answer that you are well familiar with. So Mother House has been trying for the last few years to find a new place to hold our programming. We would love to expand the number of beds we have. We would love to expand the number of bathrooms we have. As you may or may not guess, having having 2 showers and 6 pregnant women sometimes really pushes the limits of even the most patient person in the home. Anyway, we've been trying to do this for a while, and Alberto knows that several years ago, we tried to move into Longmont, but the purchase of our house fell through and it didn't work out. We've been back on that now. We actually have right now 3 different purchasers from Mother House who are particularly interested. We think that we have a chance this time. And I should back up. I'm sorry, Robert and Deanna, you don't have the background that our current facility is at 21st and Pearl. It was purpose built for us in 1996. It's an absolutely beautiful little yellow house. And also it sits at 21st and Pearl, which feels like it may not be the best use of what that asset looks like for us to hold it as a home. So thinking about, can we sell this and could we use the money to buy a larger property further out is sort of what the plan is around. So we think that we may have that opportunity again, and we would be looking at, I think at this point, probably the sort of eastern limits of the city of Boulder, but trying to move from 6 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms into a larger number of each so that we could serve not only more people, but the big deal with the bathrooms is more kinds of families. So when we only have small rooms and we have a limited number of bathrooms, it's really hard for us to host multiple families with multiple children at the same time. So we often have, I don't know, 2 to 5 toddlers in the house in addition to babies. But when we do more than that, when we look at people, for example, we had a mom apply yesterday who's pregnant. She has a 3-year-old, she has a 15-year-old, she has a 19-year-old. So you can imagine that's 1 bathroom. If we have that family move in, we would love to host them. That means everybody else is trying to share what's left. So when we're looking at not only how many beds do we have, but how many bathrooms do we have, not only can we serve more people at a time, but can we serve larger family units in each of the rooms we have at one time. So that's something that we have been consistently working on. And I think we're at a place where we may be able to turn the corner on that again. We've got a nonprofit in particular who's really interested in our space right now and working with the city of Boulder on whether we can make that transfer happen with their help.
Awesome. Good. Let's see. Any other questions? Because I can keep going, but
I can ask another one. So I guess this is more of a comment. So I noticed that you also provide services to single parents who are working to reunite with infants in foster care. And I just wanted to give a shout out that I was a foster parent. I just closed my license. I've been a foster parent for like 3 years. We adopted through foster care. And this is a topic that comes up a lot in the foster parent community, that there are a lot of resources for us. And frankly, I don't need those resources. I mean, I don't need somebody to throw me a party every year and buy me gifts and send home take-home meals. And we talk a lot about how if those resources were actually given to the people that are going through losing their kids in foster care, that the whole thing might be different. So I just want to, it's not always popular to help people who've lost their kids in foster care, but it's so important. And I just wanted to give you a shout out and let you know that the foster parent community very much appreciates and recognizes that. So thank you for doing that.
Deanna, thank you so much for that comment. I mean, I think it's something that we feel pretty strongly as well, that on the one hand, having incredible foster parents and adopted parents like yourself, when there is a need that can't be solved, it has to happen. And it's incredibly fantastic. There are folks like you who can do it. And yes, at the same time, it is really difficult that we have folks that want to parent their own children and that don't have the resources. And specifically with infants, I think you obviously know this, Deanna, but for Robert and Alberto, if you're less familiar, there's really no place where you can stay as a parent who has lost their child and be able to reunite with your child. There is no shelter situation where that happens, because family shelters won't take you if you don't have a child in your custody, but you can't be reunited with a child if you're staying at Boulder Shelter for the Homeless or another shelter for adults. So finding a place where you can be, where you can work towards reunification and then have reunification occur, it's just a gap in the system. So for folks who are trying to reunite, basically the only way that they can do it is to work on reunification while staying in a shelter and then successfully secure housing without government assistance, then reunite with their child and then apply for government programs. So as you can imagine, that middle piece, really, really difficult to secure. So we don't have a lot of rooms, we don't have a lot of beds, we don't serve a ton of mothers like that every year, but certainly when one comes in the door that feels like they would be a good fit, we do everything we can to serve them, recognizing that there just aren't other places where they can go.
So I'm gonna switch gears a little bit. Like I said, we we look at different things, and I looked at the financial piece, and I noticed you guys had a loss in 2021. You're not in your profit and loss. Let's see if I get this right, because I'm looking at your financials. Your net income was -64 in 2021.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I know what that is. It took me a minute to get back on page. So we started an ESG grant in 2021. It's
Okay.
through DOLA. So emergency service grants, it comes from the federal government down through the state, and that's what's funding our lodge program. I know we're not talking about our lodge program today, but I have to clarify that that's what this is for. It's a repayment grant.
Oh,
So we
okay.
get repaid every 90 to 120 days for output services. So we generally outlay anywhere between $100,000 and $200,000 worth of money into the lodge before DOLA sends us the money back.
Okay, so
So
that's why
that
the
program,
negative.
that's exactly right. So it was not actually a loss. It was just a paper loss. Then we had, in January or February, they sent us $120,000 and we looked like we had this enormous excess that in fact was just compensating for the repayment
so
services.
It's a reimbursement type of grant, then, not a upfront grant. Okay.
Yes, which is
So-
not ideal.
Yeah, no, but I understand that's how the state works. But okay, that was my biggest concern, is because when I looked at your 990 as well that you shared. I just wanted to make sure that things were either they were being addressed, or that there was some goals and plans around ensuring that.
That's right. Alberto, can I send you our P&L through the last day of September for this year? Would that be useful?
Yeah, that would be great. I'd appreciate that.
I'll send that to you right now. You'll see a net income on 9/30 of 54,000, which is basically the exact difference there. Yeah.
Okay, great. That was a question I had, because I was just a little concerned. Whenever you start seeing negatives in nonprofits, totally understand they happen. You may be investing in a new program. Totally get that. And I just want to make sure that we ask the question, because I totally get when nonprofit starts a new program. Sometimes it's an investment in the future of the nonprofit and the work that you're heading to.
I just sent you that P&L for our first 3 quarters of this year, so you can see it there. And yes, just the reimbursement program grant
Okay.
and the complications therein.
So we got about 2 minutes left. I'm not sure if Robert or Deanna has any other questions.
I would just like to make a comment. There was an Italian writer named Ignazio Silone, and he wrote a book called Bread and Wine. And he pointed out that it takes 9 months to make bread by growing wheat and doing all the things you have to do to make bread. It takes 9 months to make wine. It takes 9 months to make a baby. It also takes 9 months to become a new person. It's like a rebirth kind of thing. And she mentioned something like 8 months or 9 months. And I thought how very interesting that number should come up, that it takes a while. You have to be very patient, and you have to have, I just can't imagine the house with that many people in it, in that few bathrooms. I'm just giving you some credit for a great deal of
I will say I've done the site visit there. It is a beautiful house. So it feels very welcoming and warm, and the backyard for the families. It's really an amazing place. So happy that you might get a bigger place. Sad that you're going to miss some of that sense of welcome and warmth that you have. Hopefully you can, if you do get this, you can rebuild that wherever you end up.
Well, I appreciate that, Alberto. And it's actually, so like I mentioned, we have 3 potential purchasers right now. And the one we are most trying to work with is Tribe Recovery, who you may be familiar with.
Yeah.
For exactly the reason you're saying, that we would love to pass our space on, not to somebody who wants to tear it down and turn it into an apartment complex, but to somebody who wants to give it that same love for a new set of clients while we move into larger quarters. So it's our hope that that's going to work out.
Awesome. And that is our timer.
I'm so glad I made it in. Thank you.
Yes, I'm so glad you made it too. Really appreciate your time, and thank you so much. And thanks for sending that P&L.
Okay,
Thank you.
perfect. Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye.
Yeah, I mean, that house is super nice. I mean, when I did site visit, I had never been there before, and it was just warm, and the kitchen setting is just really nice. So
I bet they can get a lot of money for that plot of land, that they could build something even bigger, but It would be nice to be in the middle of everything too, probably as a resident, so.
All right, so our next group is Safe Shelter. They're not here just yet, but we emailed with them on Monday, and I think everybody talked, and that even in between emailed us about the time switch. That's the only one. So I hope that they can get in or find the link, because I think Brenda worked hard to kind of confirm, because they needed to change their time, and we did that for them. So we'll give them a couple of minutes, see if they show up. But they're a huge funder. We're a big funder of them. Let me see. Jackie. She said, we heard from Brenda, we switched time slots, Nancy Herbert and Jenny Shaw. We're going to be there. Okay.
And Jenny did confirm it.
All right, let me email Jenny real quick and see if they're having any issues.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, this is kind of weird. All right, and I'll copy you, Brenda. I just emailed her.
Same thing. They were having trouble with the Zoom link, so I'm gonna send it to the other people just in case what discussion is going on with the other ones.
Oh, she did connect with you.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, if it's our mistake, folks, we will make it right. You know, if people are saying that they're having issues, then we will make it right.
So once they come on, then I'll.
Okay, thank you for doing that. It's kind of weird.
I know. Especially because the first one didn't have an issue.
I know.
But it's just sometimes, I don't know, something happens and it just freaks out.
All right. So if we go a little bit later than 8 o'clock, that's fine.
We're not going to 9, so that's fine. With
Yeah,
me.
we'll just make sure we give everybody their 15 minutes.
Yep. It's fine.
Yeah, that was a marathon. That was
I was pretty tired by the end of it.
yeah.
Mhm. We covered a lot of ground though. It's good. We knocked it all out.
Yeah, no, I thought it was one of the best hearings, like the level of questions that we had. I thought it was one of the best hearing nights we've done. I really appreciated it. All right, here's Jenny. Good.
I'll work on the other ones, okay?
Okay. So wait for Jenny to get on, make sure. Okay, can you hear us, Jenny?
I can, and I'm so sorry the link wasn't working, and I'm forwarding it to Nancy, our board president.
That's fine. We'll make sure you get your time.
Okay.
Yeah, no worries. Like I was telling the board, if it's our technical error, we will make sure that we make it right and make sure that our agencies have their opportunity to share.
Thank you. Yeah. Brenda just sent me a new one, so we're
Okay.
good.
All right. So we'll give Nancy a minute here, see if she can
Okay,
join
thank
us,
you.
and then we'll get started.
Perfect.
Oh,
Thank
here she
you.
comes. Great. Let's get her connected and then we'll get started. No worries. All right. Hello, Nancy. So welcome, Nancy and Jenny. Thank you for being here for our hearings. I know that Jackie was unavailable traveling, but I appreciate both of you being here. So let me just give a quick rundown, introduce Deanna and Robert. They're both board members for the Housing and Human Services Board. I'm not sure if you've been a part of this. Typically, it's a lot more people, but we've decided this year we're going to try something different, and that has its ups and its downs, where we're going to let board members choose their priority area that they were most interested in hearings. And so this is why we have less folks. We may or may not have Shakita Yarborough, our board liaison from the City Council, join us. We're going to give you 15 minutes for a Q&A session. And if there is time at the end, we will go ahead and let you all share whatever you think is important for the board to know. Before we get started, can we quick introductions for you, Jenny and Nancy?
Of course. Nancy, go ahead.
Thanks, Jenny. Hi, everyone. It's so great to meet you, even through this Zoom link. My name is Nancy Herbert, and I am the new president of the board for the Safe Shelter, and I'm excited to be here. This isn't my first time with Safe Shelter, however. I served as both a board president, a long-term board member, an interim ED, and a volunteer for years and years back in the 80s and 90s. I'm returning back to the roots of Safe Shelter because the need is just so great right now. It's a perfect time for growth. Anyway, I run a consulting business, a business consulting firm, and it's called Boardroom Sage. So my specialty is board governance, and I've been working with Safe Shelter Board, doing some exciting growth things with them.
Thank you. Jenny?
Yeah, my name is Jenny Shaw, and I am the outreach program manager and the grant writer for Safe Shelter.
Great. I'm gonna go ahead and start the timer. Does the board have any questions?
I can ask some questions. I just wanted to not hog the microphone, but since nobody else is jumping up and down, I can kick it off. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how the services that you provide differ from other housing service providers that we might be talking to tonight. I mean, I feel like obviously you're one of the bigger ones, but aside from maybe volume, if there's a difference in terms of services provided that you're aware of, if you could speak to that issue, that would be helpful for me.
Sure. So we are the only domestic violence agency in Longmont, and actually the only shelter, right? So, and we are not a homeless shelter. We work with victims of personal violence, abuse in later life, human trafficking. And like I said, yeah, we're the only victim provider of that sort in Longmont. Northeast, I always say Northwest, is Northeast Boulder County and Southwest Weld County. So we serve those areas, the St. Vrain Valley School District. And we do receive people from anywhere, literally in the world, and have actually had people from everywhere in the world, or not everywhere, but from around the world. But basically our focal point is Longmont, and specifically the St. Vrain Valley School District area. Does that answer your question?
And over 45% of our services are provided to residents in Longmont.
Okay, thank you.
And we are, and just also to say, we are, as Nancy knows, because she was with us pretty much from the beginning, it started with 5 Longmont resident women who our organization, who were just tired of domestic violence, and at that time, women having nowhere to go to be safe. So our roots are definitely in the Longmont area.
I can ask a follow-up
No.
unless Alberto, if you have some questions, please.
I will say I don't have a ton of questions for you. I do have a comment. I want to thank you. You guys did a great job on laying out your strategic goals. That's always a challenge for nonprofits when I read these applications. And I get it, many times it's cut and paste. I've done that as well before, but I really appreciate your ability to answer the questions to
Thank you.
You know, this is what we're asking, and I appreciate that you, and I really just enjoyed reading what your strategic goals are. Is there any, I guess the question that you know, strategic goal number 5 is around maintaining your capital assets. You know, as you see, as I know that we've seen growth in just the need. So maybe it's a question to Nancy more than Jenny. I mean, I'm not sure if the board's having these conversations, but is there any thoughts on, expanding your capital assets, increasing the amount of beds that you have in the future?
Great question. Yes, with growth, we see that in the future. However, it's not on any kind of planning schedule as of yet, because right now our big growth area is going to be in getting some funding development raised to the next level, and really concentrating on getting that corporate development going, getting that rebuilt, having it stable. It's not that it drifted away. It's just that with the COVID interim, things kind of just scattered around. And so now we're refocusing with that. We will be more fully staffed by the first quarter of next year. And with that, it's like, straight ahead, get the engines running. And we're really going to be working hard to get that expanded. I'm so glad you asked about that, because that is a top priority for board and staff to work on.
And so I have another follow-up question. Again, appreciate the work that you all put into this application. So the board and staff, I'm staff, we look at different things on the application. Even though we both see the application, I evaluate different pieces. One of the things I get to evaluate, and it's a priority for the board, it's been a priority, is diversity. And currently you're at about 20% of your board that are people of color, and appreciate that. And I also see that that's part of your strategic goals, right? And so just want to check in on, how did you get to 20%? What are the plans to increase that, to continue to increase that as much as possible? Yeah, I'd love to hear a little more about that.
Thanks so much for asking about that as well. As you might guess, because I'm an expert in board governance, diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging is huge for me and my work. And that's something that we want to build in our board. So it's not only just putting the diversity of race and ethnicity, it's also putting the diversity of expertise and competency, different abilities, just all of the differences that there might be. And we want a really good mix on that board. And we want a board that's going to be a working board, not a sit back and just meet every so often and maybe go sit at a table once in a while board. Because we're in a great opportunity right now for growth and expansion, and to build this organization to a higher level, we need a really high functioning and high performing board. So thank you for bringing that up. And yes, we did add some great new people with some new talents that they bring to the board and great new connections. And we're broadening our ethnic mix, but it's also more than that. It's about different perspectives and different expertise and talents that will help us as we grow and try to expand our funding as well. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. I also wanted to point out that I think it's so important for this board to know that it is very difficult to operate a shelter well in the middle of COVID. And I'd like to take this opportunity to do some huge kudos, give some huge kudos to this staff that was just absolutely amazing. They kept this organization going. That shelter didn't shut down a day. It was available. They were fearless. They were safe. They kept it very healthy and safe and followed all the protocols and did everything. But the people that were in need were able to get services despite the COVID crisis that we had for a few years.
I'm curious about what's the average stay for a client in your house? I mean, is it months? Is it years? Is it weeks?
Weeks. So average 4 to 6 weeks. We are considered short-term crisis help for people who are facing domestic violence. And so One of the things about victims that you find when you work with them is how strong and resilient they are, and how quickly, if they have the safe space, how quickly they can get back on their feet and just do what they need to do to get to the next step to their journey. So 4 to 6 weeks sounds like a short period of time, and it is, but that's how we do it. That's how most domestic violence shelters run around that time frame. And overall, we find that it's sufficient. We do have what we call extended stay rooms for those who are facing some really either safety barriers or possibly immigration barriers, job, family, daycare, work, stuff like that, that just aren't working out for them. So we do on a situational basis let people stay longer than that 4 to 6 weeks. I think our longest person who stayed there, I think they were there for 6 months. And that was a large part due to safety concerns.
So that brings up a good question for me. So what, I know that you primarily serve, but you do get folks from all over the world, really. What are their biggest challenges of finding that next housing opportunity for them? Especially they've been, for example, in a long-term relationship and things have gone bad. They may not have the credit. Maybe their partner had all the financials. What are some of the challenges, and what are the things that you all do to help them through that very difficult process?
Probably the biggest challenge would be the financial piece of it, and especially if people are staying in Boulder County. As we all know, it is not inexpensive to live in Boulder County. And so that's probably the biggest challenge, is affordable housing. And then also all the other pieces that go to setting up your own household. So like you said, someone else maybe had a job, held the finances. So we do get a lot of, for example, mothers with children who have been at home with their children for the last few years. So now they have to just start all over, and they might not have a penny to their name. They might only have $100 or something like that. They've got to find daycare. They've got to work around school schedules. And so how we help them is through our housing program, and which is also funded in part through Boulder County, the HSP program. And we're able to supplement their rent for up to a year. So super helpful for them, for us to be able to help them through that program. We have some other funding as well that also helps with short-term rental assistance.
Well, I appreciate it. Actually, I have notes. So one of the other things I look at diversity of funding. That's one of my other questions, and I do appreciate. I actually wrote the note. Agency does a good job of diversifying funding, so that's your eggs aren't all in one basket. That's always dangerous for a nonprofit. When you have if it's lean too much on foundations, too much in government, those things can always shift.
For sure.
It's good to be as diversified, and of course, Nancy, being in your business, this very well, the need for diversity in funding.
Yes, absolutely. And if I might say, one of our experts in helping those women find those pathways to housing outside and finding a way to live with their families separate from where they had before is our leader of housing, David, who is, I call him a genius sometimes because or a magician maybe, because the stories I hear, the testimonies I hear from the Safe Shelter clients are all about somebody just pointing them in the right direction and showing them shining the light on the path for them to go. And man, those victims, they're so ready to get a fresh start and to go in that direction. They work real hard. It's great to see. But we couldn't do it without, the expertise of the staff that's able to help collaborate with all of these agencies to get these people going.
All right. So we have a little less than 2 minutes left. I'm not sure if Robert or Deanna have any more questions Go ahead, Deanna.
I have a, maybe this is a stupid question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. You know, we're being recorded, so why not, right? So my stupid question is, I had noticed that you weren't asking Boulder County for any funds with this application, and that seemed a little unusual to me in terms of applications. I don't know if there was a reason for that, and maybe this is just a question I should have asked Eliberto, but it seems like a lot of agencies ask for funding from multiple sources in our application process.
So we did do a Boulder County application, but it was through the safety.
Right. So,
Yeah.
oh yeah. So you're going. So Deanna and Robert, you know, Boulder County has a multiple funding streams. The one that we share is through community services, but there's also a larger funding venue that is the Housing Human Services Safety Net, the HSSN dollars, but that is not through this application. They have their own RFA application.
Okay, I figured there was probably a very logical reason for
Yeah,
it.
yeah. The Boulder County has multiple funding streams, and we partner with Boulder County on this stream. We don't the HSSN dollars. They do it on their own.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we got about 10 seconds left. Any last statements you all want to make?
This is an outstanding investment in this community. The need is huge, and sadly, it continues to grow today. It's grown for decades, and it's still growing.
All right. Thank you very much for all that you all do. Thank you, Nancy, for your volunteer time as well. Appreciate that.
Thank you. My pleasure. Great agency.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very
have a good
much.
night.
Everyone.
All right. So we have the next group. There's 4 of them in the waiting room, so they are here, and this is EFA's Atwood Shelter. They missed out last time, so getting everybody connected. Hey, Cami, good to see you. It's been a while.
Yep. Hi, Alberto. Good to see you.
Hey, Marjorie, Jake, and Guillermo. Good to see you all. You know, I'm so happy you guys are on tonight. I remember last year we had some sort of, you know, that just couldn't make it, and so, but I appreciate you all being back. So I'm just gonna go over, introduce Deanna, Blair, and Robert Putnam. They're both board members. Typically we have a much bigger board here, but this year we decided to do a little bit different and allow board members to choose their priority areas that they were most interested in evaluating the applications. We're gonna go ahead. We're gonna give you 15 minutes of Q&A, and then we are going to, if there is any time left, give you an opportunity to share whatever you want to share.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go ahead and start the timer and see if anyone has any questions you want to start with. Deanna, go ahead.
So normally Eliberto reviews the budget issues, but I had a question that I'm probably stepping on a little of his area, but I'm just curious. There obviously you're projecting a loss this year, which seems like because you need to spend down some of your funds in your reserve, not that you didn't bring in enough money, but maybe you brought in extra money. So I guess I was wondering in reviewing the application, if you have any big plans for the spend down and the extra funds that you've gotten in and what you're going to do with that. Are you just expanding services along the same lines? And I guess I shouldn't say just, are you going to continue to provide the services you're doing, maybe just more of them, or do you have plans to do any new initiatives with those funds?
Yeah. So, Brenda, great question. And I just want to also thank all of you for being here late in the evening. And it means to me that you must really be committed to the issues of housing insecurity. And so I appreciate that. We are very fortunate that we're actually purchasing a 7th housing site. And we closed in June. It will be our first property in the mountains. So it's a Nederland property. And we actually anticipate opening that up to, there will be 8 units, 4 for older adults, which is the first time that we'll be providing housing for older adults and 4 units for families with children. And that will actually happen, the transition will happen in that we will be bringing in EFA participants in January of 2023. So you're right, a big change for us, and we're very excited about it.
Thank you.
So and maybe that was part of, so I guess the question I have, because again, yeah, Deanna's right, the board and staff look at different things, and budget is one of the things that I look at. And I had noted that too, that there had been a loss in 2023, and you also had a small loss in 2021 as well. But I know 2021, that whole pandemic thing, a lot of people, yeah, so I get it. That's totally fine. But I did have a question about your strategic goals. A lot of the goals that you provided in the application are great, but they're very programmatic. And I'd love to know if there's any broader, agency level strategic goals. For example, here's a question I'm going to throw out there, because I totally see the need growing in Netherlands, but it's the need is growing everywhere. And I'm just wondering if there's any thought about increasing your footprint in Longmont, or working with the art center to whatever, just kind of like any thought on that, any conversation, any high level strategic goals around that.
Yeah, Alberto. So I want to tell you about something that I know will be near and dear to your heart, and it is a little bit outside of the scope that EFA has traditionally, the lanes that we have traditionally run in. What we are really interested in doing is not just providing housing, but also really focusing on how do we help our families move up and out of poverty, in particular around the economic empowerment realm. And that's something that I think has been missing in the landscape among Boulder, the nonprofit Boulder Safety Net, for quite a while. And by Boulder, I mean Boulder County, obviously. And so we're going to be bringing on an economic empowerment coordinator who will really deepen those employment connections. Margie will talk more about this in a little bit, but really looking at what are the holistic ways that we can increase the savings, decrease the debt of our participants for the time that they're with us, but then also, making sure that they have access to, work certifications, and building the scaffolding around some of our families who, that's just not been an area that has gotten as much attention as I would like. So I think that is, it's a little, it's a little bit of a niche area to some extent, other than the Circles program and some of the PI programming, it really has not been, picked up by a lot of agencies, but it's something that we're envisioning and investing in the rest of 2022 and 23.
Awesome. So Robert, I'm gonna either let you ask it, or because I have a question around, this is a question that Robert's asked a couple of times. So I might steal this question from Robert, because like I said, he's asked it before. How long is the average stay, with that in mind of economic empowerment, what's the average stay of a family at the Atwood shelter in Longmont?
Ooh, that's a great question. So I'm going to tell you what our program parameters are, but then I'm going to turn it over to Margie for more specifics about the families that she's actually working with, because you all know that Margie is, she is one of our rock star resource navigators. So the two programs that we operate, the short-term housing is typically 3 months. And then the transitional housing program is up to 2 years. And depending on the families, typically they will be moving from the short-term housing into transitional housing. And there are different criteria for both of those families. It is, I think, more often than not, I would say about 90%, and Guillermo may know better than me, that our short-term housing participants move into our transitional housing program because there aren't many other choices. The lack of affordable housing in Boulder County is really, it's just like, that's all I have to say, right? Like, drop the mic. It's, so they're usually exiting to like a BHP program or to our transitional housing program. But Margie, do you have, in your kind of best professional judgment, how long would you say that families stay in the short-term and the transitional housing programs?
I would say that now after COVID, it's down to an average of maybe 4 to 5 months, because it's been harder for individuals to find affordable housing. So we typically try to stick to the 3 months, but if they haven't been able to find something, we can't just, ask them to leave. As long as they are working with the program and applying and getting everything done, then we can extend them. But I think now it's about 4 to 5 months.
And how many, I remember you emailed this to me just earlier today, Margie, to prep for our talk tonight. How many units at Atwood are transitional and how many are short-term?
We have 5 transitional and 6 short-term.
And just to jump in really quick, as far as average stay, if we're looking at like our numbers from the last fiscal year, Margie's pretty close. We're between 5 and 6 months for short term because we did have to extend a lot of folks, just housing so difficult. And in our transitional housing program, I believe our average is just under 2 years.
Are these units pretty much consistently filled, or are there downtimes for these units?
We do pretty well at keeping them consistently filled. I think historically we've maintained an occupancy rate of like over 90%. We had some pretty big repairs at one of our sites, and I'm speaking for the program as a whole, but so actually, yeah, in Longmont, we're pretty much, I'm sure, over 90% occupancy rate. Yeah, I was just going to speak to, a different site, but that doesn't apply to you guys. We had some repairs, so that hit our numbers a little bit, but yeah, over 90% for sure in Longmont.
And Margie, this is my bread and butter, this poverty work. I've been doing poverty work all my life. Margie, when folks are transitioned out of the transitional housing, are they typically going to some sort of subsidy? It sounds like they're primarily going to some sort of subsidized housing, whether it be LHA, BHP, BCHA. Is that kind of the typical place they're going? Oh, you're on mute, Margie.
You're muted. Margie.
Yes. Yeah, typically they get on a wait list for some other housing program, but we have had participants be able to save enough money to purchase their own mobile home. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, so we have had a percentage of people go into market rate or purchasing something of their own.
That's good to hear. Yeah, I think that's always a goal, is to see folks increase their economic, mobility. And
it's not an easy thing to do.
So,
so I would just add to that, at the Atwood site, the average gross income at entry and then at exit has a positive net change of 10.7% for the short-term housing and 9.7% for transitional. And the transitional, oftentimes we believe that is actually a little lower because folks they've saved, but then they're using that money for the down payment on some other housing.
Awesome. I'm going to shift gears because, again, the other part that I get to review is also your diversity and your inclusivity. Now, I know that, Julie, your CEO, has been working a lot on participation in through your committees. And I saw right now you're at about 15% of your board are people of color. What are some of the things you're working on to increase that?
So, well, I do think that that is important. I would just also point out that 99% of our resource navigators are all bilingual and bicultural, but specifically at the board level, we have hired a DEI consultant group called Jake, help me here,
Point B strategies.
Oh, I know them. Yeah, I know the Point B.
Yeah. And we have deeply embedded our DEI work into our strategic plan, and that flows not only into each of our program areas, but also into the individual work plans of each employee. But we are looking at, the overarching strategy to be something that this particular consulting group helps support our work.
Okay.
And the 99%, so we have one resource navigator who is not bilingual and bicultural, but she does speak Mountain, and she is the person who will be overseeing our net owned property.
Right. Yeah. I've worked with people from the mountains before. It's its own culture. So we have about 2 minutes. Excuse me. We have about 2 minutes left. I'm not sure if Deanna or Robert have any questions. If not, then you take this time to give it to you all to share anything that you think is important for the board to know.
Well, what I think you should hear about is some of the work that Margie has done at the Atwood site. Margie, do you want to jump in real quick?
Sure. So after COVID, yeah, our stay has dropped a little bit during COVID. It was up higher because people weren't able to find anything, and people had lost their either work hours or work altogether. However, through our employment fund, we've been able to help some participants purchase items to either open their own business or help them with their career goals. And we have had a couple of families who were able to save enough money to either take over payments of a mobile home or purchase their own mobile home. So I think we've had 2 in the last year. And I know we've had more in a.
Oh, I think we lost Margie.
Uh-oh. Oh, shoot.
Okay, I'm disconnected. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yep, we can hear you.
You got about 30 seconds, Margie.
Yeah. So we've had 2 families in the last year purchase their own mobile homes, either take over payments for the mobile home or purchase a used one altogether. And we are also improving or getting back to our community gatherings. We have also joined or trying to join the Longmont Police Department's crime-free prevention program. And we're also bringing back the children's program, which has been kind of shut down with the COVID. So we are trying to improve our community.
Okay. Oh, I think we lost your time. That's okay because the time is actually up. So I want to thank you all for tonight, for being here, for the work that you do in Longmont. Appreciate it. And yeah, have a good rest of your night.
Okay, great. Thanks
Thank
again,
you.
Alberto. It's
Thank
nice to talk with all of you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
All right. So hopefully we have a new agency that applied, and before they get on, just to say the reason that I struggled with this agency because of, are they homeless services providers, or but they only work with people that are housed. And so that's why I put them in how, and I also struggled with them being in self-sufficiency as well. So it was definitely a little struggle for me to see which priority they fit in. So I ended up putting them in housing because, their whole goal is to make people stay housed by providing them the furniture they need to do that. So that was kind of a tricky one for me. I wanted, just that you all know that. But they're not here yet. I can email Mary again. Sounds like some folks are having issues with the link.
I did send that back out and advised that we're running a few minutes late. But I did send that back out to everybody.
Okay, so maybe we'll give them a couple minutes, and if they don't show up, that's fine.
You follow up with them. But this group did get on with the link that was originally sent to them, so I don't know. I think it's just something weird's going on with some of them.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, but if they confirmed, they should be trying to get on. Let me email Mary real quick and see if it comes from me, maybe.
Alberto, are we doing in between last then?
Yeah, because they switched. They switched with
Okay.
Safe Shelter.
Okay.
Hold on, let me email Mary. I don't know if I have her email actually.
Hers was at, is she home, what is it, home ahead or home?
Yeah, I'm looking for it. But she accepted, right?
Yes. And she's under Home Ahead at Boulder, Home Ahead Boulder,
Yeah, I can check through here.
Home Ahead Boulder at gmail.com.
All right, I see it. Let me email her right now.
Okay.
I hate for any agency not to get funded because they miss an
Appointment, yeah.
yeah. All right. I'll copy you on it real quick. Okay. I'm sending it right now, and I copied you, Brenda, and we'll see what happens. Yeah, the in-between's going last because they switch with Safe Shelter. And you had sent them the updated link too, or resent the link.
I did, but she just sent an email saying she's having trouble, so she didn't look at the email, so.
All right.
May I have you?
That's so weird. I mean, yeah, I guess.
I don't know. I think sometimes it's just a glitch maybe because the other agency didn't have a problem or a couple of them didn't. So let me send that off to her again.
Yeah, we'll make sure we give, like I said, we make sure that we give them their time.
Right.
Yeah, she just emailed me back. Oh, now I think she's calling me right now.
Okay.
Hold on. Mary, is this you? We are sending you the link again.
Yeah, I had sent it.
Yeah, okay. We're resending the link to make sure it works.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. I think I know what's going on, Brenda. With what she just told me, I think I know what's going on. So what happened is if you got to create a new link for every meeting, because if you use the same link, then sometimes it'll do that, because she's saying that the link was for October 3rd. So yeah, for the next ones, we gotta make sure we create new links for them, because this might happen again.
Yeah, I'll check on that. Because I think it also might have been conflicting because both Erica and I were sending out information. and so-
Okay, that's fine.
That's all right, but I'll check the other ones as well, make sure.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Mary. You're in mute. Can you hear us?
Hello. Yes. Thank
All right.
you. Sorry, that was a little bit of a nail biter. I'm like, I can't get in.
Yeah, no, sorry.
Oh, no
some-
worries.
Some technical issues. So, Mary, you're a new applicant, so new to this process. I'm gonna explain it a little bit. You're gonna get 15 minutes, primarily with questions and answers from the board. If there is time left over, then we'll give you an opportunity to share whatever you want to share. Typically, all our board members review every application, but this year we did try to do something a little different, where we're allowing board members to choose the priority areas that they were most interested in. And so this is why we have less folks on the call. Let me just introduce quickly, Robert Putnam and Deanna Blair are both part of our Housing and Human Services Advisory Boards. And me as staff and Robert and Deanna as board, we review the same applications, but we focus on different questions that we evaluate. And so you might hear some programmatic questions from Deanna and some more, I'll have some more questions around your financials and around your board. So just wanted to just set that up. So I'm gonna go ahead and start the timer and give you your 15 minutes. All right, here we
Great.
go. Deanna, you want to start? Go ahead and start.
Okay, so I had a question just because your organization is sort of unique in terms of applications that we've gotten. And so I just had some questions about how it practically works. So I would imagine you have a storage of a pretty sizable amount of stuff right now. And so you probably have to have a big enough site for that. I guess I'm wondering, when people look for furnishings for a new place that they're moving into, do they give you a list of what they need? Do they get to walk through like a storage facility and pick things out, or do you pick things out for them? Can you just tell me a little bit about how it works?
Absolutely. So currently we've got 2 storage locations. We've got, so we started in a church in Boulder, St. Andrew Presbyterian Church. And so many of the people who started Home Ahead still worship at St. Andrew. And so they were given funding to build a container, a big storage container on it's like one of the shipping containers that you would see. So we've got that on site at St. Andrew. And then we also have rented storage space at AAA in Boulder, where we have 4 storage units. Sometimes we've had 5. So right now, the way the system works is there's a couple of kind of paths to getting furniture. So we have recently developed, and we're refining, an intake form for case managers to sit down with the clients and say, okay, these are the approximately 10 things that Home Ahead helps with. And we try to refine the list to the things that are most important and essential. So, it's usually a bed, maybe a dresser, kitchen table, a sofa, kind of your basics, some kitchen supplies, some towels, linens, sheets, things like that. So they sit down, they go through the list with their client, and then there's a couple of options. So right now, if the client has the capacity, or with the help of a case manager has the capacity to come and look at the furniture and take it away themselves, then they can select it. Another kind of in-between option, which happened today, is I had clients who really, really wanted to select their own furniture, but they couldn't pick it up and transport it. And I said, okay, we have you scheduled for delivery tomorrow being Thursday. I said, if you want to come in Wednesday afternoon and I'll show you what we have, and you put sticky notes on it, then my volunteers will load those items on the truck and bring them to you. And then the third is just the folks who maybe don't have transportation or really any easy way to get to us at all. And so we will select items for them. And as I tell them, Boulder County, as we all know, has a substantial number of people with ways and means and nice furniture. And so we really try to make sure that we are giving them furniture that we feel good about. And so we convey that to them. So that's the process.
Thanks.
Sure.
So I do have a question. So my role in this evaluation is I look at your financials, I look at your strategic goals, I also look at your board diversity. And and I get it. It's a pretty new agency. You are developing yourself as a nonprofit. And I guess you applied back in September. And how are your fundraising goals being met? Because when I look at the application, I mean, totally understand the newness, but there's some gaps there, and I just wanted to check in on that.
No, those are really great considerations. And I've been with Home Ahead about 7 months now. And just to give a little bit of background, it essentially started because a woman who had experienced homelessness wandered into this church in Boulder, let the congregants know that she was unhoused and soon to be getting housing, and told them she had nothing to put in the home. And she said, and I know a lot of people like me. So we had this faith community that said, let us help. And so they did that, drawing from their own resources. And then they engaged several other faith communities to kind of join in the process. And then COVID happened and everything kind of, we put the brakes on everything. So the funding in the early stages of the organization basically came from the churches that were involved. And once COVID happened, many of the partner faith communities kind of faded away as we all retreated into our COVID corners. And so what's happened more recently, Alberto, is the original St. Andrew congregants who really made this go and had a passion for it have continued to offer some funding. And they have covered some things, for example, like letting us build a storage container on their property. We're at the point now where we really, as a 501c3, we need to be much more diversified than getting funding from 5 to 10 churchgoers. And they have launched us. But right now we really need to be a grown-up organization. And so we do continue having some of those funders that came from St. Andrew and some of the related faith communities. Our other funding strategies are to work with some of the municipalities, because we are supporting a lot of Boulder City, Longmont and county programs and nonprofit agencies. And then to also go to some other sources for donations. And as Elizabeth Crow asked me from City of Boulder, she said, why aren't you asking for any money from the agencies that you've been serving? And so we're starting to do that too. So we really have this kind of multi-pronged approach, but up until now, we have shouldered all of the expenses, and we have not had any income other than, the few members of the faith communities who really helped to launch us and send us on our way. So we're playing a little catch up in some ways of saying, okay, I was reading the other day that most nonprofits fail within a year, and we've been going for 3.5. And even during COVID, we were going strong. So the demand is there, the need is there, and with the housing first strategy, we feel like, to get somebody 80% of the way and get them in a home, but leave them in an empty home is not a great recipe for success. So, and we've gotten that feedback from a lot of the case managers that we work with. So our funding is a little bit unconventional. I know our ask is a little bit unconventional. And as I said, in some ways, I feel like we're playing a little catch up. Does that answer your question,
Yeah,
Alberto?
I'm just, again, my job is to review the financials and that was just a concern that I had when I looked at those. Robert, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. I've noted, I want to know how you get the furniture. How do you go about getting people to give you furniture? Or do you have a deal with, let's say, the Salvation Army or ARC or something, that they have furniture that they can't display or whatever, and they give it to you? I'm interested in the mechanics of how you get the furniture. So if you could help me on that.
Oh, absolutely. And that was one of the same questions I asked when I interviewed for this job. There is a surplus of furniture being donated. In fact, if any of you call ARC or Goodwill or the Salvation Army, many of them will tell you, no thanks, we have too much. In fact, I went over to True Hospice last week. One of their volunteers called me and said, we have furniture, some of it doesn't move. We need to get rid of it. Can we give it to you? We have a moving company that we partnered with that they specialize in senior moves. So they take somebody who's maybe been living in a 2,000 or 3,000 square foot space, and then they move into some sort of senior community where maybe they're going to a 1,000 square foot space. And so that moving company calls us and says, we've got too much stuff. Can we bring it to you? So we actually turn away some things just because we've got to balance our costs, because storage and transporting furniture are our biggest costs. So there's no shortage. And in fact, it breaks my heart, and it's frustrating to me, but our St. Andrew in Boulder is right next to Williams Village, which are the big dorms at CU. And the dumpsters there are full of things that are, maybe have been used for a year. So there is a real surplus. And we also get referrals from EcoCycle. One of the things we take that very, very few places take are mattresses. And it costs $30 to have a mattress recycled. It costs money to take a mattress to the dump. And we feel very proud of the fact that if it's a gently used mattress and it's relatively clean, unstained, that we have somebody who desperately wants that. That's our #1 requested item, and we can keep it out of the landfill. So yeah, I kind of worried about that balance too, Robert, but we have more donations than we can take.
Thank you.
Sure.
So another thing that I review, Mary, is your board diversity, and I'm just wondering what it's a priority for our Housing Human Services Board to ensure that our nonprofits reflect the folks that they serve. We think it's important. It's a priority, and I'm just wondering, at this point, you're pretty much all white folks, and just wondering what your thoughts are on how to diversify the board, how to work on that.
Really good question, and it's really important to us as a board. And we've been a nonprofit for less than a year.
Right.
So when we became a 501c3. It was kind of okay, let's, you have to have a board. Let's assemble the people who have helped to launch this. We are very clear and very committed to adding different voices to our board. Now there are again 2 more white people, but we started by adding 2 people who had lived experience with being unhoused. So that was one first step. I don't know if you've heard of the Lodge. It's a shelter in Boulder, but they share space in the same building. They also have space at St. Andrew. There's a case manager there who I've been talking to, who is African-American, who focuses on helping folks to find employment. And so I've been talking to him saying, this is really important to us. Might you consider serving on our board, or might you know somebody who would be interested in serving on our board? So we're doing the networking. It is critical. I've already told existing board members, get ready to rotate off, because you've been here as we launched. You've been here for the beginning. And as we're going to be closing in on a year, we still want your service, and we've got plenty of work and plenty of opportunities for volunteers, but our board must be more reflective of the community we serve and must be more diverse. I come from a former nonprofit that worked a lot on diversifying voices. And so I am a real believer that the best solutions come when you have a multitude of perspectives and experiences. And I've learned that even just having the additional 2 recent additions to the board who have lived experience with homelessness, and I'm finding out things that I never would have known. So I feel really strongly about that. And it's a problem, and it's a problem that we are highly committed to solve, because it's the right thing to do, really.
Thank you. So we got about 45 seconds left in your 15 minutes. So if we don't, unless Robert or Deanna have any other questions, we'll turn it over to you, and you can share whatever you think is important for us to know.
So this is a model that I think is super important, and I know we put it in the grant application. But as I have been in this position, I've discovered there's about 100 other home heads throughout North America. And so some of them have been around for 35 years with massive budgets. And I don't know that we need to be that, but there's a roadmap for us. There are people who say, this is how it works. These are the best practices. These are the things you want to avoid. And so it's really helpful not having to figure it all out and create the wheel on our own. And that's probably more than my 15 seconds.
Thank you very much for your time tonight. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for letting me tell you about Home Ahead.
Thank
All right.
you. Have a good night.
Have a good
Thanks,
night.
you too. Bye-bye.
All right. And we have our last agency in the waiting room. They got in, which is great, and give them their 15 minutes, and we are done for the evening. Hey, Laura and Tim, can you hear us? All right. Thank you so much for your flexibility in switching with Safe Shelter. Appreciate that. Sorry about we had some technical issues tonight that made us run a little late, so we appreciate your patience. Laura and Tim, both of you have been through this before in the past. Typically, we have a lot more board members present. This year, we tried to do a little different, and we let board members choose their priority areas that they wanted to be in. We've also lost a couple of board members, so we're recruiting board members, FYI. If you know somebody, love to have somebody from the in-between think about, one of your residents joining. That'd be great. So anyway, we allow board to choose, and so we have just the folks that are going to be reviewing that evaluation. But we'll give you your 15 minutes as well. As you know, is primarily question and answers. And then if we have time at the end, we will open it up for you to share whatever you share. Let me just introduce Robert and Deanna. They're both board members, and we're just happy that you guys are here tonight. So do we want to start with questions?
Yes, I want to know how you're different. We've seen some other people who have safe houses, and I know you're St. Vrain Valley, which means it's the school district, I assume, area. And that makes you different somewhat, but are you different in some other ways other than geography?
Than other housing providers? Yeah, I assume that's what your context of the question is in general, or?
I meant safe houses particularly. What is it that makes you special compared to other safe houses?
I don't
Right,
think.
well,
Oh, go ahead, Tim.
mind interrupting, Egbert?
No, go ahead. No, go ahead. You can answer this.
So I'll come at it from this angle. I guess what the in-between has been in existence for 28 years, so we've been around for a little while. And what we do are really two things. We provide permanent supportive housing for people who are particularly vulnerable with the history of homelessness, and also shorter term transitional supportive housing, generally around 2 years, sometimes less than that. What are, I guess, making us in defining who we are, what makes us different. We're not a shelter, first and foremost. So we're not an overnight shelter that has beds available, so to speak. It doesn't work like that. It's a process to get into the in-between through our 16 partner agencies. But there is an expected outcome on the other side, generally speaking, that we're hoping and hopeful that people are coming in with a genuine motivation to advance and move towards some greater self-sufficiency, whatever that might be. But if that kind of explains your question, I think that's how I heard you ask it, and that maybe is what separates us. I think the supportive component, which is the advocacy, case management services, on-site trainings, things like that, are what make us a little bit different than just a housing provider.
So just, I think Laura's having a little bit of challenge getting in, so she's coming back in.
Oh, coming back around. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answered your question, Robert, to some degree or in part at least. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Deanna.
I was thinking, we've talked a lot about obstacles to success that people are experiencing in housing supportive services through the agencies that we've interviewed tonight. And I was wondering what your perspective is on maybe the biggest obstacle that your clients are facing to graduating through your sort of programs and your assistance to achieve long-term success.
I would say that, the reality with housing pricing being what it is, both rental and purchase, what we have put our efforts in the last couple of years, particularly towards is creating an avenue for people for capacity building. If we can increase or allow for people the opportunity to consider other sort of career development opportunities or avenues, then we can there's a pathway then towards greater earnings and potentially greater success in finding and in retaining market rate housing. So that's why we invested this last year and a half in a career development manager, education and career development manager, to really take those folks, particularly in our transitional housing, and say, all right, so maybe your flipping burger job, it's a means to an end and it's a stopgap job, but maybe you're more than that, and we want to elevate and try to support people. And so things like that, along with our scholarship opportunities that we offer for folks in tech and trade skills, those areas. It's really about upward mobility. What can we do to promote growth and education so that people can potentially earn more, and then therefore take care of or have a better chance of making it, with pricing being what it is. So that's really probably the most legitimate and realistic barrier is people upon graduating our program, where do they go? If you're otherwise making $12, $13 an hour, what chance do you have it out there otherwise, aside from a subsidized housing situation, which is fine and well and good for those that have fixed incomes or other limited options. But so we put a lot of effort in trying to create a space for that, for people who could move forward. And that's also a little bit our motivation in our strategic planning, is to maybe we can be the remedy for that as well, and potentially build permanent supportive housing for families or individuals as well. So create our own outlet, or essentially our own exit into something like that too.
And I'd just like to add to that. And first of all, say hello to everyone. I'm Laura Liatino. I had a little technical problem. I had to switch computers for some reason or another. But, as we've grown And as it's become more and more difficult for our transitional housing people to find housing they can afford in the community, our housing advocates are spending a tremendous amount of time really working with them through that process to find and identify housing and walk through the application process successfully. So we really needed, they just didn't have the bandwidth to be providing our clients what they need and deserve in terms of the life skills trainings that really help them build the capacities that they need to achieve their goals. And, we've been very focused on hearing from the clients what their needs are. So everything is driven from a perspective of, where are the clients coming from? What do they need? They're driving the process. It's the self-sufficiency matrix is client-led. I mean, they're self-scoring that. Their success planning, which is kind of following from the self-sufficiency planning or self-sufficiency matrix, is a conversation that leads into, well, what do you want to accomplish? And so it's very focused on making sure that we're providing very relevant, very dynamic trainings for them, and identifying other opportunities out in the community, like this Yellow Scholarship program that we partnered with them on. So time will tell. We're really working on, like Tim said, that upward mobility, but also walking alongside the clients and not deciding for them what they need, but really hearing from them what they're looking for in the program.
Thank you. I do have a question, but first, there's somebody in the waiting room. Laura, I think it might have been one of your attempts. I just want to make sure you're not.
It's probably me up on my other computer.
Okay, just want to make sure you're not expecting a third person from the in-between.
No,
Okay.
sorry. Okay, thanks for checking.
All right, just wanted to make sure.
Okay.
So the board and staff, when we evaluate applications, we look at different things. In particular, staff, what I look at is financials. I look at board diversity, and I have a couple of questions on each of those. I was looking at your audited financials. It looks like you had a loss in 2021, but a pretty good 2020. But I've also, only because of where I'm at, the work that I do and I work with LHA, I know that there has been a lot of costs around remediation, in particular meth remediation. I'm just wondering, financially speaking, how that's impacting the in-between, concerns, plans moving forward. Just real brief, Tim or Laura, any thoughts on that?
We ended last year in the black, so wasn't sure from where you're pulling that the audit.
Okay, I can go back and look.
We haven't had a history. We haven't had a year yet where we've ended in the red or in the negative. This year we'll see, because this is that type of year, as you say, that has been tricky. We're sitting on 5 meth contaminated units of our own, and fortunately we rallied around that and were able to secure some funding through the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, to offset some of that. And so we got a pretty significant grant that will help with some of that cleanup. It's not going to cover everything, but it'll do it'll cover a good chunk of it. But we're having to spread that out a little bit so that we can weather that storm. And that's a really, it's one of those conversations that we haven't come to a final conclusion, other than, on the screening side of things, there are some things we can do a little bit differently looking at that. In serving the populations we do, there's some inherent risk with some of this work, and that comes with the territory. So we are aware of that. I can say one thing, I'm not sure about LHA, but we have actually refrained from and have not filed a claim, an insurance claim, 4 years running now, and we don't intend to this year either. So we're figuring out how to do these things in-house, and through these kinds of creative solutions, and find grants or whatever we can do, and then maybe being a little more diligent about our screening process and onboarding, and taking a really hard look at the meth histories. But so far we're afloat and managing. But I would say that is one piece, but it's been a challenging year, particularly with inflation being what it is. Our maintenance costs and budget has just gone I mean, we're way over budget and just blowing up everything. So the cost of doing anything is very expensive nowadays. So that's probably as real, if not even more so, than the meth units we're up against. And I don't know, that might just be the way the new norm now. We'll have to see what this looks like and make adjustments going forward. But yeah, I would say it's been a particularly tough year all in all, with, you know, those things and a few others being what they are.
Okay, I'll go back and look at, maybe I read something wrong. I just have it in my notes, so I need to check it.
Yeah, I'll peek if I have a chance here, but
yeah, no
our
worries.
our net ordinary income was in the black, if that's what we're referring to.
Probably
if you're taking the what's the term I'm looking for? If you're looking at
depreciation.
the depreciation, then of course we would be. So
Okay.
backing out depreciation, but that's sort of a phantom cost, you know.
Right.
not a
Yeah, that's
realized
just you got
cost.
you got to have it on the books, but it's not really an
That's
actual.
correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. Maybe I mean, I'm reading 51 applications, so I might have.
I bet. Yeah. Hang in there.
Yeah. So the other question I have, I mean, so I want to, you know, your board is at 20% people of color, 2 Latinos out of 10. It's
right.
definitely an increase from even the last time you were here.
Right.
And I just wanted to just check in on what are the thoughts on on maintaining and keeping that success that you're having now.
Yeah, I would say the same for staffing too. We've also seen an increase in our numbers, and Laura, you might know our numbers with staffing.
Yeah, we're at 33% now, which is a pretty big increase just from the beginning of 2021, because we had some hiring that happened and changed some of our approaches to advertising it, and we had a really strong pool of applications. I can't say whether it was any one particular thing or a variety of things that we've done, you know, even from, you know, changing the website to having a Spanish version, and, you know, trying to be more culturally appropriate or relevant with our website and, you know, our outward facing marketing materials. But we changed the equal opportunity employment statement and added a value statement onto the job descriptions. So it's improved things significantly for us in terms of having a more diverse applicant pool.
We
as
have,
far as the board goes, Tim, and you can probably speak to that.
Yeah, I could speak. So we became members of the Boulder County Latino Chamber too, by the way, last year. And that at the time, Ricardo was the executive director then. He's moved on since then, but Ricardo was also a friend of mine. And so we joined that, and have been posting things that way through the chamber. And so that was a new thing, you know, I think for us. So we're in a couple of different chambers in that way. The board itself has has revisited its own matrix, and that within the matrix there are some qualities that are appreciated within, you know, the mix of those that are being screened, or those that are interested in volunteering to be on the board. And one of those things is really, you know, has a couple of different diversity elements to it. And so besides the meat and potatoes of things like, you know, do you have a background in finance or accounting, you know, for example, that's very, or legal, having an attorney, that kind of thing. So really looking at diversity, one of the things we brought back, we had a few years that we had a gap in that, but now this year we brought on a former resident. So when we're talking about a more inclusive board, this is a graduate of our program some 10, 12 years ago, who interestingly works for EFA, a partner agency of ours, but at any rate, she joined the board, and she's a great spokesperson for the board as a person with lived experience, and also Latina herself. And so Ceci's brought another dynamic that's really appreciated, and so she's relatively new.
I think I know her.
Yeah,
she was a Circles. Yeah, she was a Circles client too. Yeah. Love her. Yeah,
Cecilia. Yeah.
I think it's her.
She's wonderful. Yeah.
Yep. So these are a couple of things that the board has done. We did a training with DEI around a number of things last year specifically for the board, also for the staff. we have an active idea. We call it IDEA. It's inclusivity, diversity, equity, and access panel. It's a joint group of staff and board to really explore all these different things, and came up with value statements and trying to be more intentional in what we're doing. And we're going to continue to do that. But I think it's one of these things that you're in for the long play, right? So we shall see next year if we're here again, what we look like a year from now. But I think we're building towards that greater diversity, certainly.
Awesome. So our 50-minutes are up. They went fast. They usually do go fast.
They do. Wow.
Wow.
So yeah, so I really appreciate your time this evening, and thank you for being patient with our technical challenges. Really, yeah, they were
Yeah, well,
always
thanks for being
interesting.
patient with mine too.
It happens. All right, have a good night.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks all for taking your time.
Thank you. Good night.
Appreciate it. Yeah, good evening. Mhm.
All right. Thank you both, Robert and Deanna, for another great questions, great night. I really am enjoying this. I think there are up and downs, but I am enjoying having these smaller groups. I think we get to be more engaged.
I think so too. I mean, it's nice to have a little more time to go over the applications and not feel like you got to like clip through all of them so fast. So yeah, I think that's definitely an upshot to this. I appreciate that. So
yeah. So
and thank you for leading us tonight and asking.
Yeah, and then that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
I'll just take the average of both of yours and we'll just go from there.
Perfect.
And there's 2 staff members reviewing it. I didn't make their staff come to the hearings, but they're reviewing the applications too. So we'll get we'll get up my average and their average as well. So
perfect.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good night. Thank you all.
You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.